All right. Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk some metal. And we're talking metal on Halloween night. I've just been out trick or treating with the little guy, got him tucked away in bed. Trick or treating in the neighborhood is over, so I figured before I completely crash from sheer exhaustion, I'd try to set things up and make a video that I've been getting stuff ready for a little while. Just haven't had time to sit down and do it. So I'm like, damn it, tonight I want to get it done one way or the other. And tonight we are going to pay tribute to Slayer. Now, you may already suspect, no, it's not going to be that Slayer. You don't need me to tell you about that Slayer. Everybody knows that band inside and out. But tonight we're going to talk about a different Slayer because, yes, there was indeed another one. The one we're going to talk about tonight was a new wave of British heavy metal band. Big surprise there. Who went by the name Slayer as well. And they made one 7-inch single back in 1983. Had 3 tracks on it, so I guess it's technically an EP instead of a single. Before we talk about this new wave of British heavy metal Slayer anymore, let's check out a clip from one of the 3 songs on their 1983 EP. This is a song called Satan is Free. All right, so that's the new wave of British heavy metal Slayer with a track called Satan is Free off their 1983 EP. So you may have noticed on the pictures from the labels on this one, it was a 7-inch EP, no picture sleeve ever made. I don't have a copy of it. It doesn't show up for sale very often. It's kind of pricey. I like it. I don't like it enough to spend a huge amount of money on it, though. The funny thing with it was that right when the EP was getting released, the lads finally caught wise to the fact that there was another band named Slayer who was starting to blow up big on the west coast of the United States with Show No Mercy coming out. And so they decided that, well, we better just go ahead and move on to another name. So they ended up putting the word dragon in front of Slayer. And on a lot of copies of the EP, what they did was quickly add a sticker. So if you look closely here, you can see the sticker over the label has Dragon Slayer, but you can still see there in the center, the sticker is very thin or partly transparent. So you can see the original Slayer logo right there above the center hole. And yeah, that's how it was originally pressed up. And then a lot of copies got this sticker slapped on at the last second. I have seen pictures online of some copies that didn't have the sticker applied, so I'm guessing some got out into circulation before they made the change, and then the ones with the sticker, kind of were caught before they went out the doors. Like, well, before we send those out, let's go ahead and make the update. So yeah, a little bit of unfortunate timing on their part with the name change. But the single is a pretty decent one. Satan is Free is pretty representative of their sound. They have a pretty good energetic churning sound, good heavy chug to it. They demoed a little bit of material at the time, but never got any further. But some of the demo material was later put out on an anthology. Yeah, I know the idea of a new wave of British heavy metal band getting an anthology out. That's never happened before. But yeah, this one's been done twice, actually. The first time they got an anthology out was on the Shadow Kingdom label. This came out in around 2008, simply called Dragon Slayer. It's got a good selection of tracks. So yeah, shown they did demo a lot of stuff. A lot of people tended to really like this collection of songs. It's considered one of the better lost set of new wave of British heavy metal recordings from a band that never really got out there. So yeah, definitely a good one to pick up. I like it. I think it's pretty good material. I will admit it doesn't come off the shelf and get played all that often, though. but it is a nice relic from the past. Now, since it's been, over a decade since this was put out, High Roller Records has also done a Dragon Slayer anthology collection that came out, I believe, in 2020. So that one may be easier to track down. I have not compared the two side by side. I don't know if they have exactly the same tracks or not, but the High Roller one probably has at least most of the same material, or if nothing else, it gives you a good chance to hear the band's material in case you can't track down the older Shadow Kingdom compilation. So there you have it. There was another Slayer besides the West Coast Mob. Now, this would be a very short video if that were the end of the story, but it turns out Slayer was a very popular name around 1983. And there's actually another band that went by Slayer. And this was another US band who was working out of San Antonio. They released a 12-inch EP in 1983 called Prepare to Die, which is this one right here with the awesome kind of, evil occult looking cover. The ram skull, bleeding, cool symbols. Always bothered me a little bit though that it looks like it's like on wood paneling or something. It's like, I don't know. Personally, I prefer to perform my seances like in the dungeon or the basement, not in the barn. But hey, it's Texas. You work with what you got, I guess. Anyway, before I keep carrying on about San Antonio's Slayer anymore, let's hear one of the tracks off this 1983 12-inch EP. This will be the track called Unholy Book. All right, so there is San Antonio's version of Slayer doing a kick-ass song called Unholy Book. Really good guitar lines in it, like the high vocals, a little King Diamond-esque there and on there for sure. And this would not be the band's only release, although it would take them a while to get something else out. I suspect, like the new wave of British heavy metal band Slayer, they figured out pretty soon that, well, we might not be the only Slayer in town, so they had to work on the name a little bit. And they finally put out a full-length album in 1988. So 5 years later, a lot of time goes by, and they had added the initials SA for San Antonio in front of the name and released this called Go for the Throat. Perhaps not the greatest cover image in heavy metal history, but kind of fun in that 80s goofy way. Got kind of an unassuming yellow label on these, and you do get band pictures here. And it's worth noting there are some not just talented guys, but guys who did go on to other things in the band as well. You've got let's see, one guitarist is Bob Catlin. You have one Don Van Stavern on bass, who of course went on to become a mainstay in Riot, beginning with the Thundersteel era. So, yep, he's had a long, good career with them. Steve Cooper on vocals. I believe he sang on a lot of the Juggernaut material out of Texas, kind of underground favorites. You've got one Dan McLean on drums. Dan probably had the most successful career of anybody out of the band, later playing with Sacred Reich in the early 90s around the independent era material. and then joining Machine Head on their second album. It wasn't on the Burn My Eyes debut, it's the second one, and had a good long run with Machine Head also. And last but certainly not least, a certain guitar virtuoso named Ron Jarzombek, also on guitar, who's played, of course, with acts like Spastic Inc. and Watchtower. And his brother Bobby's one of the more renowned drummers in the heavy metal scene. So, yeah, it's kind of weird. You've got, all these folks, pretty talented and went on to, some pretty big things after the fact. I guess you could say San Antonio Slayer was like, the Destiny's Child of Texas metal. Actually, you probably shouldn't say that. I don't know how Ron Jarzombek would feel being compared to Beyonce, but hey, if you got to be compared to somebody, might as well be Queen Bey. Am I right? I'm getting off track and bleeding true metal street cred points rapidly here. So enough about that. San Antonio Slayer album is also quite good, as is the EP. Both of these are kind of in that mid-range rarity. They've always been known to collectors. They always tend to get snapped up when they are for sale, but they don't demand crazy ridiculous prices. Both of them are usually in that, if you can get them for $50, if you feel like it's a pretty good price. If you pay $100, you've definitely paid a little too much. So they're always kind of, somewhere in between there. 50, 75 range is fair for them. There's been some reissues, so you can pick them up that way. Posthumously, there was a bootleg recording done of a live set from San Antonio, and let me double check the date on this. I think it was recorded in November of '84. I'm pulling up the details over here. Yeah, show from November 30th, 1984, that had San Antonio Slayer on the same gig with California's Slayer, that Slayer. And so you actually had a Slayer double bill. And yes, that was bootlegged on vinyl around 2004. So you have one album that has the SA Slayer set and one album that has the other Slayers set. So kind of a cool item. I don't have that one. I've never heard it, but I've seen the bootleg from time to time. So it is out there for all the Slayer completists, whether you're talking about either Slayer and you have to complete the set. But yeah, a cool band. Both releases are pretty good. Another one of those kind of, overlooked gems that just never quite got a break. Too much time went by in between releases. They didn't have the big label, but the talent was obviously there as the guys went on to a lot of other cool projects later on. All right, so we're almost done, except, that name Slayer was just so darn catchy right there around 82 and 83 that, well, it turns out there was yet another Slayer. This one was out of Arizona, and they made one album, kind of a short release though. Came out in 1982. So actually these guys beat some of the other Slayers to the punch in terms of getting vinyl product out. They put out an album called Dangerous Appetite, which I do not own, but here's a picture of the cover art. Before we talk about Arizona's Slayer, well, let's check out one of the tracks. Here's a clip from the opening song called Fighting Fire. So there's a clip of Arizona's Slayer, Fighting Fire. Not a bad track, decent guitar line to it, not a bad hook, a little bit heavy. Now, obviously, it's not, Rain in Blood heavy, but again, this is 1982 in Arizona, so you can't exactly expect it to be Seasons in the Abyss or anything like that. but still not too bad. That's the opening song, so you're feeling pretty good about it. Do have to offer some disclaimers about this recording, though. It's only got about 6 songs on it. Comes in under 30 minutes playing time, so there's not a lot of material on this album. I guess it's more of like a mini LP. It should also be noted not all the other tracks are exactly as good as Fighting Fire. To make sure folks don't start rushing out and saving up their lunch money to track down a copy of this, let's do play a clip from one more song. This is, I believe, track 3, and it's called Candy Cane. Okay, I think I've let that play long enough. So, yeah, some of the material on this one gets kind of lightweight. And to be fair, the song titles do clue you in before you buy this that it may not exactly show you no mercy. We have titles such as Blonde in Red, Candy Cane. We also have Dreamer Blue, Loyalty, and Slight Delight. Yeah, the Slight Delight track's actually probably the second best one on the album, which is saying something. Loyalty is like a very long track that wants to be kind of epic, but doesn't quite ever go anywhere. So yeah, it's kind of a tough release. Not one I can highly recommend, to be honest. I tend to like a lot of these, early 80s independent releases from the southwestern US. Things like, Volt or Volt's early Icon. Um Loosely Tight, but this one, yeah, this one comes up just a little bit short. Again, a couple of tracks aren't bad, but not one I can really highly recommend. One little bit of trivia about it: the fellow shown here, if I can zoom in a bit, one of the members, Daniel Ogawa, was also in a band from that region called White Noise, who did an album called Different within a year of the Slayer album. And it, has kind of a similar cover, simple black white graphic. I've got the White Noise album. That one has a couple of different vocalists. I think they use male and female vocalists, and yeah, some of the tracks are okay. Some, it's kind of a little bit of a hit or miss affair, but probably a step up from the Slayer Dangerous Appetite release. So yeah, I hate to be harsh on some of these smaller projects that didn't really get very far, but Dangerous Appetite is not one I recommend going out and spending big money for. There's not a lot of material on it, and some of it's going to be too lightweight for most headbangers' sensibilities. But nevertheless, there was that Slayer out there as well. Don't know what it was about the early 80s that had everybody fascinated with the name Slayer. I was trying to think if there's any other pop culture thing that had kind of spurred people to use the name. The only other thing I know of off the top of my head is that in 1983, there was a sci fi fantasy film that came out called Krull. This was very much kind of, playing off the success of things like Star Wars. Willow, I think, came out around that time. And yeah, Krull, fun movie. I loved it as a kid. Seeing it as an adult, it's a bit cringy. The effects are really bad, and the plot kind of feels like somebody's D&D campaign when it was the dungeon master had only maybe done a couple of campaigns and was still feeling things out. But anyway, the big, bad, evil magician, wizard, demon, floating head thing, whatever it was, his, grunts for his army were called Slayers. And they had, kind of, weird stormtrooper knockoff armor and laser weapons that couldn't seem to kill anybody, even though everybody else on the planet seemed to be using magic and a sword. And these guys look like they're out of Warhammer 30K, a Tau army or something. And yet, of course, they are pretty inept and don't manage to win at the end of it. But that's right around the same time. That wasn't early enough to inspire any of these bands to say, "Oh, this movie kicks ass, and we are going to call our band Slayer, like those evil looking robot things." So maybe that too was being inspired by something else, and just everybody was big on the name Slayer right around 82, 83. So you got 4 bands and one kind of cheesy but endearing fantasy movie, all playing off of that same word around the same time. So there you have it. That's every instance of Slayer I could come up with. There are other bands out there that have used the term as well, of course, I know, but let's talk about those in the comments down below. I don't know anything about those other bands. Maybe you do. Leave a comment if you do and let folks know if any of those other ones are worth checking out, or if they're just not as good as some of the other ones we've heard here. If they don't clear the candy cane bar from the Arizona Slayer, then they're definitely not going to be worth checking out. That's where we're going to set the lower limit on what's going to be acceptable here. All right, that's enough of that. Until next time, everybody take care. And as always, keep banging your head to whichever Slayer you happen to be playing at the time.